Right, let's move on and look at our second manager for today. A manager who's not been in the job that long, actually. Sometimes we look at wily veterans on this podcast and, we have sort of 10, 15, often 20 years of I guess, quotes and evidence to look through, but not so much with Chris Beech at Carlisle. He's been an assistant for many years, Mike. Anyone who's familiar with northern-based teams and assistants and coaching staff will know of Chris Beech, but this is the first time we've really seen him properly excelling as the number one at Carlisle, of course. They are in a promotion race, Mike, and Chris Beech so far seems to have really impressed, hasn't he?
Yeah, he's done an excellent job, a really good job. And I think he's been, right from day one, the moment he walked into Carlisle, he's been impressive, in terms of, you always think about a club, you look at performance data, who overachieves, underachieves, you think of the circumstances that he came into. Carlisle were no better than mid-table League Two. That was the budget. There's lots of issues to deal with in managing Carlisle in terms of geography, if nothing else. Trying to recruit players is hard enough. And yeah, Beech just seemed to get a handle on the job almost straight away. And it was a curious appointment when he was made, because he'd always been a number two and at Rochdale mostly. And, it was kind of, he'd just been plucked out of the shadows and, wasn't as assistants go, wasn't a big name as he was just kind of this name that had been on the circuit for a few years, but nobody really knew anything about him. But immediately impressive as soon as he stepped into the role, and it's continued this season. Again, very similar to Lincoln. We just talked about Michael Appleton. I don't think anybody really predicted Carlisle would be gunning for automatic promotion this season. And obviously, until what's happened recently and now the catch-up they've got to play, they were firmly in the mix for automatic promotion going into January.
Yeah, you mentioned Chris Beech at Rochdale. One of the reasons why we wanted to talk about him this week is because we covered Keith Hill last week. And you described Keith Hill as a philosopher, a long-term thinker, always sort of looking to the future. And then you described Chris Beech as a bit more of a logistics man and a doer, I guess, in that sense. He just gets things complete and is there to kind of help people like Hill who need an assistant who has that kind of personality type. So now that he's number one, Mike, is that any different, or is he still very much following that pattern?
Yeah, I think so. He just gets things done. He gets right to the heart of a problem straight away. And, he gets through an awful lot of work. He finds quick solutions to any problem. And I think the Carlisle job is the sort of job that you're never short of problems. Problems are just continually finding you. And to have a manager that can just immediately find a quick answer that fixes, he's quick to land on solutions for any situation. And you listen to him speak in his interviews and, he takes in a lot of territory in terms of what his information he's taking on board. He's got a lot of perspectives. He sees things from a lot of different angles, and then just can quickly land on an answer to any given problem, whether it's logistical behind the scenes, whether it's a player problem. I mean, we're talking now about the way their season's panning out, and he's when it comes to managing players' resources and fitness levels and energy levels, he's the sports science side and all of that. I think he's right on top of it all. And we say Keith Hill's mind's in the future, but Chris Beech can be very future focused. He's always thinking a few steps ahead. And you can see that evident now in the way that he's trying to bring his players back to fitness after some of the things that they've been through.
Yeah, really affected by not just COVID, but also weather postponements as well. And of course, Carlisle have so many long trips as well to make in League Two as well. So got to be tough to manage all of that, as with a squad as well who are quite young. Chris Beech has done a magnificent job, though, Mike. How does he go about his business? And we know he just gets things done, but how has he turned this group of players into promotion candidates?
I think his recruitment has been a big thing in the summer. The players who he added, he did a lot of research into the background of players, and by which I mean it seemed as though a big part of his recruitment policy was following the story of a player. Can I motivate a player based on where they've been in their career? Not looking for players that have had, seamless careers, players that have had ups and downs, and just getting him at the right time. Where I believe this player's at the right time now, by me saying the right things to him, I can get his best years out of him. In the next 2 or 3 seasons, I'm going to get the very best of this player's career. And I think that's generally the thought process he's gone through with every player that he's recruited. And it seems to have been very, very deliberate recruitment, deliberate in terms of the personality that you're bringing into the building, but deliberate in terms of fitting into the style of play as well. You know, I think they're very direct by the sounds of things, and you know they have a, you know, it's again, you talk about a manager who cuts to the heart of the matter. There's no messing about. You know, we know how to hurt teams, so we want to hurt teams as soon as possible. We know how to control games. We want to control games properly. We'll buy the players with the right skill sets that enable us to do that. And you know, there's a lot of that goes on a football pitch that doesn't really matter at the end of the day. So there's no point being overly pretty if, you know, you've got a job to do is get the ball in the back of the net at the opposite end of the pitch. So I think Carlisle are quite one of the more direct teams in the division, and the recruitment's been suited to that. But it's mainly about Beech, I think, getting players below value. You know, you talk about a player's value. If their story to date suggests that they're not actually worth that much, but you know what's to come in the next few years if you tap into the right thing, then I think that's basically what he's been doing. He's trying to buy players just before they're about to peak in their careers with the right direction.
So it's a different narrative to Gareth Ainsworth then, because on the podcast in which we covered him, we talked about how he taps into players who've maybe fallen foul of the system, who maybe feel as though they've been hard done to. Whereas, are we saying Chris Beech is kind of spotting those players on an upward trajectory and getting them before they can peak?
Possibly a little bit of both. I think essentially what he's doing is profiling. You know, he's profiling a player's career, and he's imagining ahead. Okay, I've seen that this has happened at this particular club. He didn't get a chance here for this reason. So he's not tapping into injustice necessarily the way that Ainsworth does. He's just tapping into unseen potential. He knows that a story could go any one of two ways. And if a player was actually not doing bad at his last club, but was being overlooked because the play, you know, he might have been in a 50-50 competition for places with a better player, but this player, had he been trusted, would have done the job just as well. I think he's kind of seeing between the lines of these patterns of a player's career and just understanding the alternative path, the way it might have gone differently for that player under different circumstances. If they're at the right age and they've just not been given the right chance yet, that's kind of what he's trying to buy into, I believe.
We talked earlier about how Appleton's, I guess his information, the quality of his information is very handy for a quick turnaround. Saturday, Tuesday. Carlisle are going to have an awful lot of that over the next few months. How good is Chris Beech, or how good do you think Chris Beech will be at getting that information across with very little time? Because also with Carlisle, you've got to factor in those journeys as well.
Yeah, I think this could be a difficulty, because I don't think it's necessarily, I think his information's good. I just don't think it's clean sliced like Appleton. And I think there is an element of, you know, we're talking about outer world, getting things done in the outer world. And that is, you know, that can be drilling on the training ground. I think it doesn't necessarily suit Beech. I think Beech will always make the best of the situation, the hand he's dealt and the situation he's facing with his quick turnarounds. But I don't think it necessarily suits to get the best out of him as a manager, recovery prep relative to other managers. I think he would like some time on the training ground with his players. So, you know, he's got a lot. He's able to manage, you know, the logistics of the schedule and the resources and trying to manage players back to fitness. But he's being dealt a real tough hand at the moment. So, although, you know, there's only so much he can handle, it'd be interesting to see how it goes. I don't think the conditions of the season now necessarily suit Beech, but I don't think he'll be overwhelmed by any stretch about what he's got to deal with in the coming weeks. It's just whether they can get that, you know, that productivity going again between, you know, where the players aren't relying too much on what he can do for them. They you know, they do get back to full fitness. They do get confidence back. They do start winning again and get back into a rhythm. I think that's the important thing for Carlisle right now.
We see a lot of assistants progress and become number ones, and they sometimes have that small, like, upward surge, particularly if they take over when a manager has been sacked. But then very often it soon goes sour. Chris Beech hasn't really had a patch yet where he's struggled. This is sort of coming to roost now. We suspect he's going to turn it around, Mike, but what other skills does he have in order to try and stem the tide here? Because Carlisle fans are understandably excited. They're in this promotion race and they don't want to blow it here.
No, well, I think, first and foremost is, we talk about him having been an assistant and, some assistants step into the role in the peaks and troughs. I think Beech was always meant to be a manager. He spent all them years behind the scenes at Rochdale as a number 2. I think he was always destined to be a manager. I think he's more comfortable as a manager than he is as an assistant, not the other way around. But yeah, it's going to be tough. What they're on, is it 5 defeats and a draw or 4 defeats and a draw in the last 5 matches? They had 4 weeks without a game. Really tough set of circumstances, COVID issues, and they're possibly playing the price a little bit right now for the fact that Beech is thinking steps ahead, because he's not driving his players too hard. He's not pushing them back in too soon. He's trying to manage minutes a little bit. He's thinking about the back end of the season more than he's thinking about the here and now. He's thinking about, we don't want to burn these players out and push them too hard too soon, and then we just drop off a cliff because of energy levels just aren't there. So I think this has been a difficult period for them coming out of this. And the other difficulty they've potentially got is the fact that, they're new to this promotion race and everybody's played them once now. Second time around, everybody's going to know what they're about. So we're going to be better prepared for what a game against Carlisle entails. And obviously they've got this big schedule. I'd have said going into January, I'd have thought they were looking nailed on for me for top 3. I thought they were, and then even only 2 weeks ago, they were 9th in the table and favourites for the title because it's such a bizarre season and there's so many games in hand. But I think people look at games in hand and automatically equate points and just think, oh, well, they've got this many games in hand, they should get this many. And it doesn't work like that. It's not that straightforward. I think they're up against a lot. I think they will be good enough to get in the top 7 because Beech is good enough and Beech has been good enough on everything we've seen so far. So they should bridge the gap to get into the top 7 with them games in hand. But I'm worried for them now about automatic because I just think they've been dealt too cruel a hand. And I don't think many teams have probably been dealt a worse hand from COVID and in terms of disruption. In theory, you think 4 weeks break between matches could serve you well later in the season. I don't think it's going to pan out that way because they had COVID issues in the middle of that 4-week break as well. Players who actually had to deal with COVID symptoms and stuff like that. So I think it's going to be, an arduous second half to the season. But I think they've done enough, and I think Beech is doing enough to believe that they'll finish in the top 7 and get a crack at promotion via the playoffs.
Well, there we go. Chris Beech profiled at Carlisle, and we wish them well, of course, in their hunt for promotion this season. Really congested at the top of League 2. So Chris Beech and also Michael Appleton profiled this week as well. And if you want to use the managers that we talked about to aid your betting, just like Mike has, there is a case study, Mike, at the just underneath on the link to this podcast.
Yeah, I've been using manager profiling for since lockdown, basically. And I've found it really profitable. It's been really good for me. Just being able to come at betting in different ways as a strategy from, nowadays it's all data science and it's all about specific team strength. So hard to win at that game now because the computers are so accurate in the way they're reading performance data. So, manager profiling is just a way to come at certain matches from the side door and know when to oppose teams, when to back teams based on the manager's sort of personality type and leadership style. So, yeah, it's been really good. And there's a case study that basically explains how I use it to make those profits.